Whispers from Hollow Island. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a friend who gave you the creeps, but you couldn't explain why? Someone who smiled at the wrong moments, laughed too hard, stared a little too long. This story is about the last summer I ever saw Jace, and the nightmare that still follows me. Back in middle school, I didn't have many friends. The few I did have were a bit strange, but so was I. We stuck together, me, Eli, Ben, and Jace. The four of us did everything together: sleepovers, video games, biking until dark. Looking back, maybe it was obvious things were changing. Eli and I were getting closer, and Jace and Ben were starting to feel distant. But I never expected what was coming. That summer, Jace invited us to his family's vacation home. Said it was on a small island up north, Hollow Island, I think it was called. We didn't even know his family owned a place like that. When we asked about it, he got weirdly quiet and said it was just a place they don't talk about much. That should have been the first red flag. The drive was long. I had a cold, which only made it worse. Jace's dad kept glaring at me in the rear view, probably because he was one of those extreme germaphobes. Every time I sniffled, he'd clench his jaw. Eli and I bickered over something dumb most of the ride, which wasn't unusual for us, but it only added to the tension. We had to drive onto a ferry to get to the island. That part was fun. It felt like a real adventure, like we were about to live inside a movie. But as soon as we arrived, that feeling faded fast. The house wasn't big, but it was off, like it was stuck between time periods. I remember thinking it felt like a place that didn't fully belong in our world. You ever feel that? Like the walls are too quiet, like something's watching from inside the wood. The island itself was strange too. Everyone seemed to know Jace. People waved at him by name, even adults. But Jace had never told us about these people. He never mentioned anyone from Hollow Island. It was like stepping into a dream someone else had, and being expected to play along. We spent the first day riding bikes all over the island. That part was fun, just being kids. But on day 2, things started to go wrong. I couldn't find my Ravens FC snapback, my favorite hat. It was a gift, and the only piece of merch I had from my favorite team. I was crushed. Jay said he thought I'd left it on the beach. I didn't believe him. I was almost certain I'd packed it. When I asked his dad about it, he basically told me to suck it up and not ruin the trip over something so small. The next day, I realized one of my pens was missing. That might sound dumb to you, but I had a weird pen collection. I was obsessed with them. Each one had a story. When Ben told me he saw me holding it on my bike earlier, I knew I hadn't just forgotten it. But I didn't want to look like a crybaby again, especially not in front of Jace's dad. So I faked being sick and went to bed early. That night, something woke me up around 3 a.m. I remember lying there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, trying to fall back asleep, when I heard it, whispering, barely audible, like someone talking under their breath on the other side of the room. At first I thought I was dreaming. I froze. My heart was pounding. It was coming from the top bunk across the room, Jace's bed. I couldn't make out the words, but the voice was steady, calm, almost like it was chanting something. I wanted to ask if he was awake, but I was too scared to move, too scared to breathe. Eventually, I forced myself to ignore it and somehow drifted back to sleep. The next day, I tried to pretend everything was fine. I didn't want to seem paranoid. We were playing this dumb game in the yard when Jace said he needed to use the bathroom. He was gone for a while, but that was typical for him. He always took forever. I happened to glance back at the house and froze. There in one of the upstairs windows was Jace, just standing there, staring at us, blank expression, no movement, just watching. And that's when it hit me. There was no bathroom upstairs. I remember feeling the blood drain from my face. I turned to Eli and Ben to see if they saw it too, but they were too busy laughing. When I looked back, the window was empty. That evening, Jace's dad planned to take us to dinner, but I didn't want to go. I told him I still wasn't feeling well and stayed behind. As soon as the car pulled out of the driveway, I got out of bed and went to Jace's duffel bag. I don't know what I expected to find, but it wasn't this. My Raven's cap was sitting right on top. I started digging through his stuff, heart pounding, and that's when I found them: my missing toothbrush, my nail clipper, and even worse, a pair of my underwear. I was frozen, disgusted, but what made my stomach turn the most was the notebook. It was thick, worn, pages bent. I opened it and immediately wished I hadn't. It was full of pencil sketches, wild, erratic, disturbing sketches. Some pages had been drawn over so hard they were torn through. There were images of monsters, grotesque creatures, violent scenes of people being stabbed, crushed, mutilated. It was beyond messed up. And then I saw me. Drawings of me. In one I was tied to a post, legs missing. Another showed me drowning. One was just my name, written over and over again. The final page had my name in big, bold letters, followed by 4 words I'll never forget. I'll do it tomorrow. I couldn't breathe. I slammed the notebook shut and backed away like it was cursed. When they returned, I quietly pulled Jace's dad aside and showed him what I'd found. At first, he looked like he didn't believe me. Then I handed him the notebook, and his face drained of all color. He told me to put everything back exactly as I found it. I didn't want to, but he was the adult. As I placed the notebook back, I made a snap decision and tore out the last page, hiding it in my pocket. Minutes later, Jace's dad burst into the living room and told everyone there had been a family emergency. We had to leave. Now we packed up so fast, it felt like we were escaping a war zone. I never turned my back to Jace. I could feel his eyes on me the entire time. We caught the first ferry off the island and drove straight home. No stops, no talking, just silence and the sound of the road. Jace was dropped off first, then Eli and Ben. When we were alone, Jace's dad told me not to say anything to my parents, that he'd talk to Jace's family himself. But I couldn't keep it in. As soon as I walked through my front door, I broke down and told my parents everything. They called the police. The page I'd torn out was enough for them to get a warrant. They found the notebook, found all my stuff, except the pen, the one that started it all. That was never recovered. Jace never came back to school. His family moved within the week. None of us ever heard from him again. Until last week. I came home and found an envelope in my mailbox, no return address. Inside was a folded piece of paper that read, "I remember everything." And wrapped inside it was my missing pen. If anyone out there has ever gone through something like this, something that stays with you years after it ends, let me know in the comments. And if you've ever had a friend who made your skin crawl for reasons you couldn't explain, trust your instincts. I wish I had. The last shot in the woods. It happened just last week, and I still can't stop thinking about it. My family isn't exactly what you'd call typical. We're different. A mix of gun enthusiasts and die-hard hunters. And when we vacation, we don't hit beaches or theme parks. No, we go full wilderness. Every winter, the adults pool money together and rent some giant place in the middle of nowhere. This time, It was a monstrous cabin out in the backwoods of Maine. Looked more like a fortress than a house, probably because our family rolls in deep. Now here's where things get weird. One of our long-standing family traditions is a twisted game, laser tag in the woods. I know how that sounds, but we don't mess around. We use custom, military-grade gear my Uncle Reed designed. Dude treats it like a real-life tactical op. The rules? Simple. Every person for themselves. Last one standing wins the jackpot and gets a full year of bragging rights. Once you're tagged, you make your way to the bonfire pit near the house. When the second-to-last player shows up, everyone left fires a shot into the air to let the final player know it's over. Real Hunger Games stuff. This year was my first time joining. I just turned 18, and I was beyond hyped. Not for the money, but for the thrill. The adults lined up by the back porch, everyone dressed like they were about to invade a small country. Reed gave a quick tutorial, then told us all to set a 10-minute timer. No warning. As soon as his timer buzzed, he shot off like a maniac into the woods. Everyone followed, scattering like it was a prison break. Most people went uphill, so I figured heading downhill would give me a better shot at hiding. The snow made the forest glow with this eerie white light, enough to see but just dim enough to give you that uneasy, watching over your shoulder kind of vibe. I found a little ridge that overlooked the hill and ducked down, catching my breath. Game plan: move sideways along the slope, eventually circle up behind whoever was still up top. It felt strategic, smart. I crept left for maybe 15 minutes, sinking deeper into the trees. That's when I heard it. A soft crunch in the snow behind me. Too light for a deer, too careful for a cousin just bumbling around. I froze and slipped behind the nearest tree. Waited. Watched. Nothing. Then I saw them. Just the faintest marks. Footprints in the snow leading to a tree about 50 feet behind me. Someone was hiding. Someone had followed me. Now pause for a second. Ask yourself, why didn't they tag me? I'd been out in the open. A perfect shot. They were just watching, creeping. I bolted, heart hammering in my chest. I pushed up the hill, snow clinging to my boots. I thought I was shaking the tail until I saw another trail of footprints. These were different. They looped in from deeper in the forest and arced around behind mine. Whoever it was, they had circled me. And then, I swear to you, I heard someone fall. The snow makes that unmistakable thud. I didn't wait to find out who it was. I booked it toward the house, ducking and weaving between trees, adrenaline pulsing. Checked my phone, past 11 p.m. already. I had been out there almost 2 hours. That's when I spotted fresh prints heading in the same direction I was. I sprinted, hoping to catch someone off guard. Sure enough, I spotted my cousin Dylan trudging ahead, gear in hand. I crouched, aimed, fired, zap. His marker blinked red. He cursed, slammed a tree, and stomped off. Victory. Feeling bold, I decided to bait whoever had been shadowing me. I sprinted for a minute, then doubled back, ducking behind a thick pine without leaving fresh prints in the snow. It was perfect. I was invisible. I waited, and then my marker blinked. Out of nowhere, I'd been tagged. What? I hadn't seen a thing. The beam of light came from the exact spot I'd just passed. They were right behind me the whole time. I stood up, annoyed, expecting them to reveal themselves and turn off the beam. But they didn't. The red dot stayed fixed on me, like it was mocking. I stepped toward it, heart pounding harder with every crunch in the snow. I could only see the person's hands. The rest of them hid behind the tree. I was maybe 20 feet away when I heard it. Gunshots behind me, not lasers, real shots. 3 loud and sharp. My blood froze. I must have won. But then, who had just tagged me. I turned back toward the laser, and finally the person stepped out. It wasn't anyone from my family, and they weren't alone. There were two of them, both strangers, standing still, almost calm. Before I could process what I was seeing, a sound came from behind me. A heavy crunch. I spun around. A third figure, a man in a ski mask holding a black trash bag in one hand and a knife in the other. I didn't wait. I screamed and ran, ditching my gear and flailing through the snow like a madman. They chased me. All three. I could hear them yelling, words that didn't even sound like English, garbled, animalistic. I ran harder than I ever had in my life, lungs burning, legs trembling. I could see the faint lights of the house ahead when I heard the snow crunching violently behind me. That's when I saw him, Uncle Reed, charging toward me with his rifle. He raised it and fired 3 shots into the air. The shadows behind me froze, then ran. I collapsed at Reed's feet, wheezing so hard I couldn't speak. I blacked out in the snow. The next morning, the adults pieced everything together. Turns out my aunt had dropped her laser gun when she fell, which explained how someone else had ended up with one. Dylan had racked up 6 tags before I got him, so technically, he was the final one, which means I should have won. But then, who tagged me? Reed and my dad had searched the woods with real guns, but found nothing, just footprints leading in too many directions to follow. The next morning, chaos broke out again. Reed was shouting outside, losing it. I rushed downstairs to find everyone staring out the kitchen window. There it was, a single snowman facing the house. In its hand, my aunt's missing laser gun. Reed stormed outside and emptied 3 rounds into its head before stomping back in, muttering threats. It's been a week, no signs, no answers. But let me ask you this. What would you have done if someone hijacked your family game night in the middle of nowhere and watched you from the shadows for hours? Would you have made it back? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still listening, make sure your next game night doesn't end like mine. Because sometimes the woods play back. The Whispering Pines Incident. It was senior year of college, and while everyone else was headed off to party in Cancun or Miami, I was trying to scrape together anything that resembled a spring break. I wasn't part of the Greek crowd or any group that could afford 700 tequila-fueled getaways. I had no shame about staying on campus the past 3 years, but that final year, I needed to feel like I didn't totally miss out. My girlfriend, Amber, ended up finding this rustic Airbnb in a small woodsy town called Whispering Pines, a few hours north of where we were. It was far from the beaches or party zones, but it had charm. The pictures showed a cozy cottage tucked deep in the trees, complete with a fire pit, an outdoor hot tub in its own little screened room, and even an old vinyl record player. It had a vibe, peaceful but mysterious. Amber and I invited her best friend, Marcy, and her boyfriend, Dylan. We figured it'd be the perfect couples retreat. The drive was a bit cramped. Dylan had a small convertible and made a big deal out of how efficient it was, even though we could barely fit our bags in the back. We pulled into the rental just after sunset. The trees were so thick around the place, it felt like the house had been swallowed by the forest. There was only one neighboring cabin we could see, and even that looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. The first night was calm. We played board games by the fireplace, sipped on wine, and talked about life after graduation. It was one of those rare nights where everything felt easy. Dylan was a bit quiet, kind of in his own world, but we figured he just needed a drink or two to loosen up. The second night was when things started getting strange. We finally convinced Dylan to join us in the hot tub. It was late, probably close to midnight, and the four of us were playing a game of Never Have I Ever, laughing way too loud, half drunk, and just enjoying the moment. The tub sat inside this screened-in structure with open views of the trees. It felt like we were floating in the middle of nowhere. Then it happened. A blinding white flash lit up the entire hot tub room. It wasn't lightning. It was too clean, too focused, not like a camera flash on steroids. Music cut off. We all froze. My heart was hammering in my chest. I stood up, dripping, and made my way onto the back deck. That's when I heard it. Click. A soft, rhythmic clicking noise, like someone tapping metal against wood. Then, another click, from a different direction. I turned my head, whistling, soft and eerie, coming from everywhere and nowhere all at once, like someone was playing a twisted version of hide-and-seek out in the trees. I called out to the others, "Get inside, now!" And they bolted out of the hot tub and into the house. I followed, slamming the door shut behind me. We were all dripping wet, huddled in the living room. The lights flickered once but held. My brain was racing. Was this some sick joke? A prank from a local kid? Or something worse? Then came the banging. Boom! 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 Someone was at the front door, fist pounding like they were trying to break it down. The girls were sobbing now. I yelled to Dylan, "Call the cops!" while I grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen drawer. I shouted through the door, "I've got a gun!" Total bluff, but I said it like I meant it. The banging stopped. Silence. Long, brutal silence. And just when we started to believe they might be gone, glass shattered. A massive rock flew through the front window and crashed into the floor. The sound of glass and screaming filled the air. I ran over to check, stepping carefully over shards, and that's when I noticed the note. It was taped to the rock, written in thick, scratchy ink. "Go away. You shouldn't be here." Viewers, let me pause right here and ask, what would you do? You're stuck in the middle of nowhere, no weapons, police half an hour out, and something, or someone, is watching from the woods. Do you run? Do you hide? Or do you grab that kitchen knife and prepare to go full horror movie final boss? Back to the story. When the police finally showed up, sirens echoing through the trees, they did a full sweep of the property. Nothing. No footprints. No flashlights in the woods. No broken tree branches. Just that one shattered window and the eerie note. We didn't wait for answers. We packed up and left that same night. The host refunded us without question, but completely ghosted us after that. Not even a sorry that happened. Amber still thinks they knew something. Maybe the cabin had a history. Maybe locals didn't like outsiders there. Or maybe it wasn't locals at all. Needless to say, I won't be booking an Airbnb anywhere rural again anytime soon. If you've ever had a chilling vacation story, or stayed somewhere that didn't feel quite right, drop it in the comments. I want to hear your haunted getaways, your eerie cabin stays, your "this is how a horror movie starts" moments. And hey, if you're ever deep in the woods and hear a click followed by a whistle, don't wait to find out who's on the other side of the screen.